Well, hello, Sandy.
Amy, we're back.
We're back. It's season 5 of Your Real, Your Ideal. Can you believe that when I say season 5?
No,
I
I had to
know.
go back actually when we were cleaning up. So, to our listeners, Amy and I, well, Amy keeps me organized. How about that? But we have a shared Google Drive and we always keep different episodes and, oh, whether it be links, what have you, outlines in that Google Drive, but we do it by season. And I had to go back and look and say, okay, is this really season 5? And
I
some of the
know.
seasons, like last season, we do a spring and a fall. So, hello, puppy.
Sorry, Bella. There's she
That makes it real, Amy.
so real. Okay, I apologize. I will cut that out of the video.
We are all good.
I'll cut that out of the audio. The video, we'll probably still have it, but the
Well,
audio
it's
we
good though,
will cut out.
because then people can see Pretty Bella in the background. So, but yeah, I cannot believe it is season 5. And the other funny thing to me, Amy and I, even though we've talked over the summer, this is, and we had a planning session before this. I wouldn't say we're coming in cold, but we haven't done a full catch up
Yeah.
of what's been going on. And it feels like it's been forever. I had to go back and look at my memories and say, gosh, what have I all done since
Oh my
I've
God.
seen Amy last?
That is exactly what I did. I went in and got on my calendar, which I should go through my photos too, because that's going to be a good. But this episode, we're going to talk about summer catching up over the summer because we haven't talked a lot over very little over the summer. A little touching base when I noticed we were going to be in the same city, like days within
Which
each
was
other.
crazy.
I know. I was like, wait, you're in Seattle? I'm going to be there in like 2 days.
We
So,
literally had some of the same pictures at the same spots within days of each other.
yeah, that's crazy. So, which is weird because that's not my neck of the woods. I hadn't been there for 30 years. So, just funny that we were there at the same time. So let's talk about the summer. What we haven't taped since the end of May. So when you were going through your memories, what came up?
Oh gosh, a lot of things came up. What came up just at a glance, because I take a lot of photos and I do a lot of things here and went on vacation too, because there's a lot of fun things going on here. Overall, without getting into details and reflecting on the summer, which I think is a great exercise to do, is to go back and reflect on seasons and pieces of time, was that I had a great mix of doing staycations, vacations, and spending time with the people that mean the most in my life. I all quality time with all 3 boys, quality time with stepson, with parents, with other close friends and siblings. I mean, not all in that area, but it was, when I looked at it, it's like, wow, this is really well rounded. And then I would tell you the other kind of summary point would be, I really tried a lot of new things as far as adventures, and I was pretty succinct and staying the course on things that I've done forever, like running and cycling, making sure I got that in my calendar. So, I mean, I tell you, my general reflection was it was a fun summer, got, and the memories showed, going to different places. And I could sit here and go through the entire calendar, but maybe you talk about yours and we can then either get into highlight reels or, probe a
Yeah.
little bit deeper. How about you? How about you when you looked at your calendar?
Same. What I have discovered because I've done this hard pivot with my business, and because of that, I have space in my calendar and more flexibility.
Mhm.
Because right now I'm doing a lot of pitching for keynotes in the spring and summer next year. Well, actually, yeah, I'm now to summer next year and some fall, but usually I'm like working and busy. And when you're pitching, but you're not doing a lot of the work. You're just
Right.
putting it out there and
It's a
getting,
different kind of work.
yeah, it's like building a pipeline. So there's this whole flexibility, which created this opportunity for some good quality time with people. That's where I was looking through my calendar, and I did a road trip with one of my aunts. She's in her 80s.
Oh,
And
wow, that's impressive.
I know she lives in Arkansas. She wanted to go visit my mom. And so I was like, well, I can take a few days. She didn't want to fly anymore. She's like, I'm done flying, but I want to go visit your mom. I'm like, okay, I'll take a few days and drive you out there. Then it gave me the opportunity where we overlapped in Seattle. So I did a trip from Arkansas to Las Vegas
Okay.
driving, which was fun. Beautiful, beautiful scenery.
And
Love
that
that.
had to be, how many hours was that?
It was right around 20, I
Okay.
think. Okay. And then I did a road trip with my son from Kansas City to Washington State
Oh,
because
that'd be longer. How long was that?
that was right at 30 hours. So, anyway, two really big quality time road trips because my aunt is starting a little bit of dementia. And so hearing her stories, it was a lot of listening to family stories. And then with my son, it was a lot of just that one-on-one trying to pull things out of him.
Right. A
He's not a
different
big
kind of
talker.
different spots in life, right?
Totally, totally. But it was really fun. And we've done a lot of travel. One of the things that I am seeing on my thing is going with Trevor to Washington State. I had 4 states left that I had never visited, and that knocked out 2 of them. I had never been to Montana or Idaho,
Wow.
and doing that drive, so now I'm down to 2 states that I haven't been to, which is really exciting to me.
Can I ask you, just because both Montana and Idaho were a bit of stomping grounds for me from living in Idaho for a year, and actually it's a little generous saying we lived in Montana for 6 months. Garrett lived in Montana for 6 months, and I went back and forth.
Uh-huh.
Where did you go, and what was your perception of those two new states?
So for Montana, we did, I'd say the east and north of Yellowstone. So
Okay.
in on the east and left the north and stayed in Bozeman,
Okay, and
and,
that's where we lived.
and then did Glacier National Park.
Okay,
And
nice.
so I did that for, it was a very fast, quick because we were driving. But beautiful, beautiful.
Beautiful.
Bozeman is a cute little town. And my grandparents were actually married. My grandfather worked for the CCC in Yellowstone, and my grandmother lived in Bozeman, and they met and they were married in Bozeman.
Really?
Um, yeah, so that was a little bit of a going through there. That's, where my grandma and grandpa Cook met and married. So that was kind of fun. And then Glacier National Park is just beautiful.
Well, we need to get back there again.
Yeah, it's very beautiful. And then Idaho, we were up in the northern part of Idaho crossing.
Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it was a total of 70 miles and went through Wallace. And that was one of the most beautiful 70 miles of the country. It was just hills and trees and just beautiful. And Wallace is a really nice little town that we stayed in.
And I do think sometimes those two states, I don't want to say they're underrated, but they're beautiful states. But typically when people go to Yellowstone, then they'll head down and do like the Tetons and there's certain stomping grounds that you wouldn't think, Yellowstone, Montana, and they're not as much destination states. I think more, Wyoming, Colorado, even Utah for what it's known for, but Idaho's beautiful and it gets so lush as you go further north. Well, Amy, good
Oh,
for you. Those are
yeah.
2 great states to get off of the list and take in.
I can't believe I've never been there. And I will tell you, Montana's been on my list for 20 plus years. Like
Right.
it was a trip that was planned 20 years ago that didn't happen. So yeah, so now I have Alaska and Vermont. Those are my 2 states.
Nice.
And
And
just this weekend, I was in Boston, just outside of Boston, and somebody said Vermont's just an hour away. And I was like, I didn't have time to go.
but you know, Seattle, I had never been to Seattle before. That was my first time in Seattle. And that's where Amy and I, to the listeners, that's where we crossed over by days when you took Trevor up there on your road trip. And I went with my stepson, my husband, and we did the loop into British Columbia and spent time in Vancouver, Victoria, and then and I wore my North Cascades t-shirt because we did a lot of good hikes in Washington. And I had no idea Washington was so beautiful to hike in.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because
Yes.
they're national parks you don't hear as much of. You know, you don't hear of the North Cascades and, you know, Olympic. And
Yeah.
it's, you know, I knew of them, but I was just blown away with the beauty. But it takes a little bit more work to get in the middle and stay. It's not as, oh, I don't know, resorty is not the right word, accessible with shorter hikes. So you kind of have to be serious about your hiking if you're going to
Yeah.
go and do it.
Very cool. And the other, so Trevor and I were doing a lot of researching about hiking in Washington State
Mhm.
because he's going to be living there for the next 4 years. So he's over by Olympic. I think that's the one that's across the bay, right? Or
Yep.
from Seattle. So he's over in that area. And, but we went through Leavenworth, Washington,
Okay.
which is, I don't know if you've
I
done
don't
that, but it's a
remember
little,
that, but you know, I was in the back seat. I I was not a backseat driver, but I was just kind of taking it all in without service most of the time. So
it's a
oh, yeah,
couple,
but I don't know.
yeah. Well, you would remember it because it's a little Bavarian town and
Oh,
it looks like you're in the Swiss Alps. It is so cool, like the buildings and uh I was really impressed. We stopped there for lunch. It's in the Columbia River Valley by all the apple orchards and all the fruit orchards. There's lots of fruit orchards. I was just really impressed with Washington State. I would, I'm always amazed um, at this country and how much scenery we have and how much space we have.
and how it uh, varies, and then there's histories, and then there's these little gems. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love a good road trip, and you know, looking back at the summer, it was a good I had a good variety between road trips and flights and not too much. I tell you one thing that I thought of before we talked today, and I don't know, I'd be curious if you do this or if this is just a personal trait of mine. So I've been gone for 9 days. I had a keynote speech that was back in Nebraska. So it was in the middle of the week. So what I did is I piggybacked it with visiting my mom's sister, my Aunt Joan, who lives back, and then my oldest son, who lives back there, and then also caught up with some other people. So I was able to kind of use the weekends, but I was gone for 9 days.
Yeah.
So when I got back, Garrett was, when I woke up this morning, we were enjoying our coffee and he was asking me questions about the trip. And again, I updated him at a higher level, but I have moved on. Like I will wake up and that next day after vacation, I am mentally thinking about today and the future. And I almost forget about some of those things. I think I close them if it's something worthy of a Facebook post, right? Or of organizing my pictures, put everything away, and I quickly move on to the next thing. And I was thinking about that as we were going to talk about summer, because I have to go back and look because I'm so quickly moving on to the next thing. But I don't think that's such a good thing. I think should I reflect a little bit more rather than being so organized and onto, I savor it, I enjoy it, but do I move too quickly onto the next thing that I can't even remember what I did, 24 hours after I've shut that down in my head? So is this a Sandy thing or do you do this, Amy?
Sandy, I do the exact same thing. I actually do it in my day. And it's not just weeks where I leave and I am the worst for circling back on things and remembering things. And what I have found, I started doing this journal this summer called the 5 Minute Journal. I don't know if you've ever heard of
I like
that.
that one. I'll show you my journals right here. I've been doing mine, but I think it's a little bit more than 5. leave something
Oh,
to the imagination.
oh, nice. This 5-minute journal, so this one has prompts
Okay.
and it tells you, you start your day with what you're grateful for, what would make today great. And what would make today great has to be something that you can control. It
Okay.
can't be like, oh, if the sun comes out today, that would be great because you have no control over that. So it has to be something that you can do to make today great. And then a daily affirmation. And I have been doing that this summer. That's one of the things I wanted to share, that I started that this summer. And it has been great because I'm focusing on those things. And then at the end of the day, you come back and you do highlights of the day and what did I learn today?
Mhm.
And somebody asked me, they're like, well, when you do the highlights of the day, do you go back and look at what would make today great and see if you made it happen? And I don't. And I'm sure that could be a useful
Right.
tool. But for me, at the beginning of the day, the definition of what would make the day great at the beginning of the day is not the same as what makes the day great at the end of the day.
That's
A
a good
lot of
point.
times,
Mhm.
like a lot of times, the end of the day, it may not have looked like I had planned. And by the end of the day, it looked good for other reasons. It was just an interesting, and
I
so
love that.
I've been trying to, but I do that with vacations. It looked good then, but I'm moving on and I'm focusing on the here and now more so. I don't know.
I do think the journaling, and there's so many different ways to do it, because I actually started this up back again, probably back in the spring, and I will write in it the morning, the day after, because I think it's good for me rather than to get in the seat, walk the dog, because I will so focus on today. I have it on my list. It's a nice little closure, and I will do it the next morning, first thing, to just kind of think about, because it does help me think about, gosh, what was good, what do I want to do to either carry something on, or it's a good closure for the day before to think about what I want to do in the current day. Now, I love the prompts and I love that, but I'm usually pretty fluid in kind of summarizing, and sometimes it's just thinking thoughts. I'll make a little note on a great idea I came up with when I was walking the dog that I want to make sure I don't forget. And then maybe at the same time, then I'll put it on my master list, right? On, oh gosh, remember that story idea. I'll take it to that next level by closing out the day. Does that make sense?
Completely. Yes. And I'm pretty impressed though that you can reflect on yesterday the next morning.
It's not always easy, but it's good. But
Yeah.
that's kind of like, I kind of got to do it right away before I completely turn on the computer. But I've found it to be a helpful exercise, and that's why I've continued to do it for months and months. And whenever I travel, I've got they were all gifted to me, 3 different types of travel journals. One is a really pretty one called Road Trips, and they give you prompts, and it's really fun when you are on a road trip because it asks you what restaurants surprise you, kind of really specific road trip questions. And it's really a pretty book that's packaged. But then I have one that just is a travel journal. So trips like this back to Nebraska, I will write things in daily, but that is nice because when you redo a trip or you're thinking about your last trip, I can quickly go back and say, oh gosh, what did I hit? What didn't I hit? It's a nice reflection for the next time, or those ones. It seems like I'm hitting those going backwards or trying to memorialize something. So I do a different type of a journal when I travel.
Nice. Well, I will tell you, that is something I learned this summer, that the journaling, I have never been a journaler. And this type of journal where it's quick, easy, it's 5 minutes. I always have 5 minutes,
Right.
has really helped me gather my thoughts. That's
Right.
what I would say. For me, it was very easy to say, oh yeah, I'm grateful for all sorts of things. And uh, sometimes, having to pull it and not repeat the same thing over and over is like, all right, this is making me dig a little deeper. And also the other thing I like about this, at the end of the day, it asks you, what did you learn today?
Nice.
I also appreciate that because it makes me actually put words around that thing, because I always say, oh, I learned something new every day. Okay, so
What
tell
is
me
it?
exactly what is it? Exactly. Instead of it just being this grand thing. So anyway, so I know we are coming up on 30 minutes and we're going to stick to our 30-minute schedule. Did you do at the beginning of the summer? I made a summer to-do list. Did you do that? Did we do that together? I'm trying to
I am sure we didn't because I'm not wired really well that way. And when you bring it up, I just had a birthday in September and I had a friend asking me, so what are your goals for next year? I'm like, it's not that I don't have goals. I don't typically, I know exactly what I wanted, what I'm working on right now. And I have a general idea of if they're 1 month, when they need to hit, what the big projects that I have. Usually it's never a year. Usually it's something within 3 to 6 months max for me. And then what do I need to do each month and even every week to accomplish those? So I'm not really good at saying, here's my summer, other than I always keep on my radar that I have checked the box, that I have not taken up my time with things that are not allowing me to spend time with my parents, my kids, my stepson, my husband. And so, especially my kids, because they're adulting and they have their stuff going on, I make sure I've got trips on the calendar, either them here or me there. Did you map? You must have mapped it out and you must have had this conversation. Somebody else out there mapped it out too, right?
I, well, I had a bucket list and there were things that were added to my list that I did not have on my list. But they're being new to Kansas City.
Mhm.
I There were
Right.
some things that I knew happened in the summer, and I was like, I want to make sure I'm remembering to capture this stuff. And I think I got through. I don't have my list in front of me, but I've been keeping an eye on it. I think I'm through about 90% of it. And
Nice.
some of it, I think some of it's going to happen this fall. It was just a little like, oh, that'll happen in September, October. But anyway, it was a really nice opportunity. Like I wanted to make sure we got in a visit to the outdoor theater here,
Right.
Starlight.
Ooh.
And I know it's very fun. And then like there were just some things I wanted to make sure we did that I had to be intentional about.
You know what I was very intentional about was athletic type things. I've now coined myself a leisure athlete
Nice.
because I like to enjoy and have fun, and I like to fill my spare time, my leisure time, with a lot of athletic type things. But that doesn't mean I'm going for the gold medal. My husband can go for the gold medal. But I have a Google Drive where I organize my days and I have kind of my lists organized. Every day I have basically I have a sheet that's an exercise schedule, because the summer sports for me are mountain biking, road biking, paddleboarding, yoga, running, and I want to do strength training. But what I was finding was the issue wasn't me doing it. It was me making sure I was allocating enough that I was getting them in and being thoughtful about it. Every Monday morning, I map out, I look at the weather, because you have to worry about the weather with most of them. And I would intentionally map out when I was going to do the workouts, because the other side is you can't spend your whole day working out. You could, but it was very, very mapping that out was very, very successful for me, because I feel like I got my mountain bike in every week. I got my road bike, and I was very intentional about it. So that weekly intentionality with my leisure athletic adventures was a great way to tackle the summer. Because with the outdoor stuff, you do have to worry about the weather.
Right. But I love this whole concept of you wanted to be intentional about it. You looked at this calendar on Monday and the weather on Monday and you plotted it out and then you did it. That's what
And then
I,
around meetings, and if it includes other people, what you have to do them in an order, right? There's a priority, there's the uncontrollables, but yeah, I feel like, and then there's sometimes you have to say, maybe that's really not that realistic that I can do that twice a week, or what's got to give, right?
Right. Making choices around your priorities and being intentional about it. I love it. That's awesome. That is like what I work with 90% of my clients to do. So good job,
Hey,
Sandy.
I got a star. I got a star. Yay.
It gets me so excited when I hear people doing that. I'm like, oh. Okay, so let's talk about our season. We need to wrap up, but I
Okay.
do want to share. We are kicking off season 5. We're going to come back. We have some really good topics. We have, let me see what we have. We're going to talk about imposter syndrome. That's one of the things that's been resonating for me with some stuff, and I'm hearing from a lot of people about that. The Barbie movie is on our list to talk about, which I don't know if we'll talk about that as a standalone or something. I'm just going to tell you, this is our brainstorm list. So our titles might change and the conversations may
Right.
evolve. This one, are you the same person you used to be? I love that. And well, I'm not going to give you the answer right now.
I'll probably ask my mom after we've thought about it and see what she says after I come up with my own.
Yeah. This armchair quarterback, which is coming from the book Think Again by Adam Grant. I read that this summer and just really, it resonated with me a lot. Artificial intelligence. That's something I think we're talking about next podcast. And there's a lot of conversation. I just went to a conference and there were a lot of people talking about this artificial intelligence and what does that look like for, for the productivity industry and for owning a small business and marketing there, that industry. Anyway, there's lots to talk about on that. So there's lots
Can't wait for that.
I know.
And we are going to bring in a few guests too this season. It's not an every week thing, but we are going to be bringing in some guests, both Amy and I, and those guests, although we'd love to have like Adam Grant and things like that, what we're centering it around, it was a conversation we were having on all the people that we meet in our new places that we've met and heard people's stories. So we're going to be bringing in some people from I think it's a Dr. Seuss book, Oh, the People That We Meet, but we'll be bringing in some guests too that we found interesting. So we think the listeners will find them interesting too.
Yes, I love it. I'm excited. I'm excited to have guests and opening up that. And here we go. Season 5.
High five. We got this. All right. Our artificial intelligence next week, Amy.
Yes. Thanks, Sandy. Talk to you then.
Bye.
Bye.